All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Luis Vasquez. Welcome to our weekly webinar. That other handsome gentleman you see on the other side of the screen is Carey Ransom. So I wanted to welcome everyone to UCI Beal Applied Innovations weekly webinar, where we're focusing on conversations with VCs and investors. Our goal for this series of events is to continue to connect the Southern California ecosystem with investors and entrepreneurs and the people that are actively making things happen right now, along with the entrepreneurs, to continue those connections while we can't be together in person. Our hope is that through these conversations and the insight you might gain and the enthusiasm, then it'll be part of what helps us in the recovery, helps us thrive as we're building out. So for today's webinar, we're honored to have Carey Ransom from OC4 Venture Studios with us today. Kerry and I have known each other for a pretty long time, and so I could probably do his bio myself, but we'll let Kerry get into that as we're going into our discussion. In fact, Kerry, it occurred to me that you were part of a panel that I helped create, I think back in 2008 at one of the original Octane events, if you could recall that one. So we did quite a few things. So before we get started, a few logistical details. So on this webinar, all of the participants are muted. So if you have questions, though, there's a Q&A box. We encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll moderate those and get to them during the course of the conversation. And we are recording this as well. So the recording and the slide that we're going to show will be available by Monday. We'll post that on the website at UCI Beal Applied Innovation, which you can find at innovation.uci.edu. And keep your eye out on your emails. We've got next week's event already scheduled, and so those emails will be going off probably sometime on Monday. So with that, Kerry, I hope you're unmuted. You're awfully quiet over there. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So why don't you tell us a little bit about that background that I alluded to a few minutes ago, and kind of the various roles that you've held?
Sure, happy to, Luis, and thanks for having me. I mean, of course, when I'm looking at you, I feel like, that's the last thing Luis wants to hear is my background, because you've known it for so long. So, to just quickly address it, I'm a transplant to Orange County, as you know. I grew up in Indiana in a family business, and my dad sold the family business. It was a retail lumberyard a couple of years ago. It was 146 years old when he sold it, and so I kind of tell the story as, we were in the same community in Indiana for 150 years. I'm now planted here in Orange County and trying to set the groundwork for the Ransom family to continue here for the next 150 years. And so a lot of what drives me is that orientation to really look beyond myself and, my time here, but are there foundational investments and values that I can help bring here to make things better. So that is actually a lot of what drives me and has driven me because of that upbringing. So I came out to California after the .com crash and ended up using grad schools as my excuse, and quickly realized I wanted to stay here, and that meant I needed to meet some people because I didn't really know anyone here. And I met a founder early in my time here who happened to be based in Irvine and had a software product. And really my first quote unquote investment was that company. I did pure sweat equity and became the first business person in this company. And when I met the founder, he had a great software product and one customer. And I said, I'll be your salesperson. And I came in and figured out the go-to-market and how to market it. And I would literally in the middle of class be marketing this company and adding customers. And very quickly we grew. Very quickly we actually sold the company, and that became my first investment return. That I traded my time in that case for equity. We sold the company. It ended up a part of Microsoft in about 2005. Nice. And all of a sudden I had some liquidity, and I turned right around and started another company. And that was probably about the time or shortly thereafter that we met. I met Gary Augusta, who was getting Octane off the ground, and got involved in Octane and said, well, I need to find some other people that are doing this here. And so really since then, I feel like I've been pretty involved in the startup community. And what that really got me thinking about was this idea of equity. I grew up in a family business. We were always owners. And this idea of just working for a salary was just not in me, but I didn't have to start the company myself. And so really, as I've thought about how I show up in the world, I really think of myself as an operator and as an investor or an owner. And that's really been a hallmark of what I've done. And so started a company after MessageRight. After about a year, my partners and I shut it down. I joined a company here at the time that was starting to have some early traction called Web Visible. And I came in, and within the first month, I actually bought out one of the co-founders. And we went from a couple million in revenue to tracking toward about 20 million in revenue in 2 years. And the company grew really rapidly. And again, I started to experience some of that. Oh, I own a pretty significant stake in this business. This thing could really have legs. And so I think those are the kinds of experiences that have really shaped me. And now looking backwards, there have been about 10 of those since I got to Orange County. And I've now lived so many lives in a bunch of different companies, in a bunch of different industries. And I've started to realize, wow, I've got this pattern of experience that actually not that many people have globally, and certainly not that many have here. Because
Right.
as you know, a lot of the technology companies and startup companies here just take longer. They take longer to get off the ground. They take longer to launch. They take longer to grow versus other markets. And that's held Orange County back. And so part of what I really aspire to bring with OC4 is a different orientation and a different set of value than what has historically been here, to really partner with founders to get them going faster, growing faster, and ultimately maybe succeeding and selling faster, to really create that reinvestment loop here in the community that we just haven't seen enough of.
Yeah, you're doing quite a bit. I mean, you've been doing a lot, just actively involved in the community anyway. And now what you're doing with OC4, really putting kind of tangible efforts kind of with those. So you touched it on a little bit more, but can you describe perhaps kind of what drives you to do that? From a personal level, there's entrepreneurial drive, and then there's this community drive, and I see so much of that kind of on both sides. So you mentioned your upbringing. Maybe you could peel that apart a little bit. And wouldn't you know it, for the first webinar in 5 weeks, the landscapers showed up next door. So if you see me disappear for a second, I'm going to try to take it. But go ahead and tell us about what drives
Sure.
you.
So it is, I mean, it is that upbringing that drives me, because I saw this idea that you're in a community, you contribute to the community, and that's what makes it better. And I think I learned very early in life this idea that if you want to see change in the world, you have to be the change. You have to lead that change. And so for me, it's always been about leading by example. I mean, how could I ever ask anyone to do something if I weren't willing to do it myself? And so I've really been a big believer in that. Like, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And whether that's been me getting super involved in things like Octane or the startup community here, or even, my kids' school or my kids' sports or other things, it's just always been that idea. I think I learned that from my dad, and it's just stuck with me my entire life, that you have to lead by example. And so I've done that, and hoped and that would inspire others to come forward and be part and be encouraged. And that, I think we can live much happier lives when we see that we're able to help others, give to others, grow others. And I look at it, I've been very blessed in my life. I've been very fortunate. And the idea that I would enjoy that on my own seems really sad to me. I'd rather see huge numbers of people here with great success and great confidence, and that there's plenty. It's sort of that abundance mindset that I think, really strongly does pervade me.
Is there a particular entrepreneur in either our region or a different region that you've seen that has done a lot of things for their area that you'd like to model yourself after?
I don't know if I would say from the entrepreneur. I mean, one of the people that I greatly admire, and I frankly haven't shared it with him enough, but I sort of share it all the time, is Mike Messala, who is a pillar of the Orange County community and has been for a long time.
Yeah,
And Mike has been
one of the founders of Octane as
incredibly,
well.
yes, one of the founders of Octane. I mean, he has been incredibly successful as the leader of Edwards, spun it out of Baxter about 20 years ago, a little over, and wildly successful. But what I so appreciate about him is that he shows up, and he doesn't have to, but he does. He understands the complexity of a community and an ecosystem. He's a great leader of his company. He's incredibly humble in how he leads, but he's also incredibly inspirational.
Hmm.
And it's not just about him. He's delivered incredible returns to his shareholders, but he also has incredible following with his employees. He understands the customer deeply and the value of that linkage. And he also understands the community that they're a part of, whether it's his industry, but also this Orange County community. And to me, he is exactly the kind of leader that we need many, many more of here in Orange County, and even as startup entrepreneurs, to think about this really complex ecosystem that is not just about your investors. It's not just about yourself. It's not just about any one of those. And Mike is one of those that I think is just exemplary here in our community. And he's exemplary on a global scale, but he happens to be here
Right.
in Orange County.
That's very well said. I agree with that. So you've done, before we get into CLA, because I want to talk about CLA
Sure.
a little bit, then we'll kind of go into OC4. But uh, tell us about some of the activities
Sure.
that, I know about. I participate in those. So what are some of the things that you and some other folks have kind of pulled together almost informally to build these connections?
Sure. So a couple that I would probably point to, one that has been a really fun experiment, frankly, and I sort of committed myself about a year ago, I guess, and I said, hey, I'm so fortunate to know folks like you and so many amazing people in this community. Not enough people know them, and not enough stories are being told to inspire and excite people. So I get to have coffee or lunch or other meetings with people every day. I'm going to start recording these, and I'm going to start sharing them. And so I started this show, Accelerate OC, and it's been a remarkable journey, and it's been a ton of fun. I feel so incredibly blessed to be able to do it. And really, it's just this opportunity to find and continue to tell stories and let people tell their stories. And we have amazing folks that have been on. I mean, Richard Sudak has shared more about what's going on at Beal Center, Applied Innovation, and UC Irvine, and had folks on from Chapman and from Cal State Fullerton, and we'll have folks coming on from some of the community colleges in the future, some great entrepreneurs. I just posted this morning a conversation I had with Wallace Walrod, who's the chief economist for the Orange County Business Council. And I think what I've realized from that is we let stories pass too quickly here. And you think about someone like Stuart McClure, who started and sold Cylance just about a little over a year ago, and it's already forgotten news. And that is a huge story. That is a huge story for Orange County, a huge story on a global scale, and we need to really tell those stories and retell them, because not enough people know them. And I think that those are where we need more. So that's probably been one of the more enjoyable things that I've done.
Let's explain to everybody fully what that is. So you're referring to your podcast, Accelerate
Yes,
OC.
correct.
So where can people find that? Someone actually just asked that question. So tell them where they can find it. And Travis, if you could do me a favor, if you can find the link to that and put it in the chat, well, I'd
Sure.
appreciate that. Travis is
Yeah,
looking
it's
behind the scenes
yeah,
for us.
sure. So accelerateoc.com is, you can absolutely find it there. But it's also on every major podcast network. You can find it on Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. And it's fun because I do it live every Tuesday, and then I also have, during this time, I've been recording a number of them and releasing them as well. And so yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and I think particularly in this environment, a chance to have more of those conversations.
Yeah.
And it's just been a passion project. But
Yeah.
I think I've gotten a lot of people saying, "Hey, thanks. I didn't know this story," and that's been enough to just keep going. And I do it at OC Talk Radio, and I think Paul currently has about 25 shows, and he continues to say, like, by far this gets the most engagement of
Nice.
any of the shows because it's about Orange County, right? And I really am trying to showcase people from Orange County. And now, in this environment, I've allowed some other people from even outside to start to participate. And I have, as an example, I'm having Spencer Raskoff on next week. He was the founder of Zillow and ran Zillow for a number of years. He's moved back to LA. Zillow happens to have a big office in Irvine, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. But he's in LA. He started a new media property there called .LA that is really looking to showcase the Southern California region and almost be like the equivalent of TechCrunch for Southern California. And so I think we're going to continue to build upon Orange County, but also look at how we connect it in to the region. And so to your question about the other things, some of this is about looking beyond Orange County's borders. But as you know, I've been really focused on trying to just connect Orange County better, because I think for far too long, because we haven't been so connected, we've thought too small. As I said earlier, things have taken longer than they should to get off the ground.
Yeah. So you're actually in OC4 Venture Studios right now.
I am all by myself. So
I am not at the Cove, although the Cove
it looks like it
behind me. Yeah. But why don't you tell us about OC4, kind of how it came together,
sure,
and what your model is, and let's kind of we'll break that up into a few things. So how did it come together?
Yes. So if you look back, I mean, I sort of set the table a little bit in that I've been doing kind of early stage investing and operating mainly here for the better part of 15 years. And what OC4 really almost became a culmination of a whole bunch of things that I and some other folks around here had been doing and talking about. And so my partner at OC4 is a guy here named Kyle Camrose, who born and raised Orange County. He was the co-founder of a software company here called Cloud Verga that is still going. Cloud Verga is doing well. It's actually right pretty much across the parking lot from the Cove with their office. And Kyle and I have gotten to know each other over the last few years, and we were talking about some of the challenges of starting a company, growing a company here in Orange County. And in his case, he's raised well over $100 million, and he was not embraced in the early stages as an investable company. And he's obviously proved that there are people willing to invest in his software business. And he's in the mortgage industry, which obviously is a pillar industry in Orange County.
Right.
And if he should be able to attract capital for a business here, that should be the kind, and he's a domain expert. And so we've talked a lot about that and said, this just, something isn't quite working. And it's not just about the lack of capital. It's that understanding of what does it mean to be an investor at various stages. And as you and I know, there are a lot of sophisticated investors here, and there's a lot of capital, but you have to really look through the life cycle of the business. And so after now being here as long as I have, one of the areas that I believe we have continued to struggle in is what I would call the supply of fundable companies.
Okay.
and it's particularly at the early stages. So what I've seen happen over and over and over, if you look at it from the entrepreneur side, is you have a lot of people that have Kyle's experience where they struggle to raise early capital here. And so then they ultimately have to go outside. In his case, he said, I'm going to build it here one way or the other, which he did. But he'll admit, like many of my other friends who have raised capital here, that those funders from outside the area were absolutely pulling or pushing him to leave. Why are you building it there? Why don't you build it somewhere else? And we lose some of those people. Actually, Wallace Walrod and I were talking about that we lose people at various stages because of that. And he committed to building it here. And, part of our vision is to start and build more companies here and give people the confidence to stay here and to continue to do it here, because I totally believe we have everything we need to build world-class technology companies here, or else I wouldn't be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's from the entrepreneur side. From the funder side, we've had challenges where they start with the full intention of investing in Orange County companies only to not find enough. And so then they start driving to San Diego, to LA, they start getting on planes, and all of a sudden they've got way more of their capital deployed outside the area. And so we've had this recurring matching problem for a long time. And I look at it and I said, okay, we want to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as I said earlier, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and we're going to start this. And we're going to start it not because we feel like we have a bunch of ideas that we want to fund, but because we know we can pull together some capital. We've been building companies for a long time. I have the good fortune of knowing some great talent that is also really interested in working with early stage companies. And so we're going to start OC4 as we call it, a venture studio with a focus on partnering with early founders who have great ideas and that are open to the idea that they also need a lot of help, because company building is a team sport, and we'll make an investment of capital, but we'll also make an investment of a whole bunch of capability in the early stages to help get them off the ground faster, growing faster, and as I said earlier, ultimately having that success here. And so we started this 6 months ago, or just under 6 months ago, and we're off and rolling. And I think we're seeing some really early progress that maybe even exceeds what I anticipated.
So, so that you're clear, so we're clear with others, because the models are different.
Sure.
So you will take kind of outside ideas. You're not coming up with everything yourself.
Right.
You're open to outside ideas.
We have not launched a single idea ourselves yet,
Okay.
and we've made 5 investments so far.
But you might. I mean,
We might in the future. We'll see.
Sure, sure. So capital and resources. I love that OC4 actually stands for something. What are those for?
Yes. So one of the things that we as we were thinking about this was, it is, designed really for Orange County. That was a core part of it. But we said too often here, and I think some of this is bad advice or people, taking conventional wisdom or reading off the internet or whatever. So often they're taking that fake it till you make it. Hey, Luis, if you just find me $500K, I got everything figured out, and capital is the only thing standing in my way. And so Kyle and I said, look, we get it. You need money to grow a business. I totally understand that. The capital is only one of the 4 C's as we think about it. And in our case, we would say it's effectively 25% of the equation. It's 1/4. And, if you don't understand that you need a lot more, then that probably is going to disqualify you from working with us. So for the people who just want capital, we're probably not the right partner for them. And we acknowledge that we're not for everybody, but we have capital to deploy. We're about to close on another investment right now. So even during this environment, we are staying very, very active. But capital is one of the 4 C's. The second is coaching, in that we believe we're all coachable and need coaching and need coaches. And so we have both within our team, and we have a great growing group of volunteers within the community who are coaches and are offering to work with our companies, offering to work with the community. And we're doing a whole bunch of coaching on a weekly basis right now. We just finished a series of events in that area, and we'll continue to do that, we think about collisions. Collisions are where opportunities, where the right kinds of talent can come together. And part of the challenge of Orange County has historically been not enough collisions occur. And that's where I get really excited by things that you guys are doing at the Beal Center, is that is a perfect place for increasing numbers of collisions to happen. You know, virtual events like this are in the short term having to replace some of those, but that collisions are where sometimes serendipity happens, but they can also be intentional. And so we're pulling together groups to really strategically collide, and we work carefully in some cases to construct companies where we meet a founder, hey, you're really missing in this area. We're going to go pull in some people to collide with you or create some of those strategic opportunities down the road. So collisions is critical. And then the last C is community. And we fervently believe that you build better companies in the community all along the way. And this idea of we're going to go off and be by ourselves and figure it all out ourselves, and we'll emerge when we're done, I think is just the wrong way to think about how to build great companies. And so we have really worked hard to build this inclusive, open, visible community to welcome anyone in who wants to be a contributing part to that, including the companies that we're bringing into the studio.
And how big a role are opportunity zones with what you're doing?
Sure. So we built the first office here in Costa Mesa. So we're in West Costa Mesa, which is an opportunity zone. And that's a good question. The way that Kyle and I thought about it, I spent a fair bit of time last year becoming versant, I will say. I don't by any means view myself as an expert, but we became pretty well versed in opportunity zones. And so we decided that was an experiment worth adding to our overall strategy. So the studio is in an opportunity zone. The businesses that work out of our studio, we are getting them set up to be qualified as opportunity zone businesses. And what that enables is the potential for opportunity zone investment in those businesses. And one of the thoughts was that it's very early, and particularly in investment in opportunity zone businesses. I read a note from a friend of mine in New York this morning, and he has a fund that invested in a business in Colorado, and I think they deployed $1 million, and he believes that's the largest opportunity zone business investment that has been made from a fund.
Really?
And I don't know if that's true, but that just shows how nascent in business investing. And so we actually have a fund that could actually facilitate doing all of this. So we're set up to do it. Thus far, though, to be totally honest, as you know me to be, Opportunity Zone has not been a critical part of what we've done in this first phase. But because there is so much understanding of real estate and the tax incentives around real estate in this community, we believed that having that option of Opportunity Zone investment could be a bridge to connect some of the real estate capital and some of the real estate capital gains here to invest in the innovation economy here in Orange County. And so we felt like leaving that option open could be a cherry on top of all the other things we're doing to potentially attract in some other outside capital into the tech community here.
Okay. I've been involved in a venture studio model as well.
Yes.
And, great things can happen there, but there's also kind of some challenges. So what are some of the challenges to the venture studio model, and how are you addressing them?
Sure. Great question. So, I think a couple that we've been really keen to navigate as best we can. I mean, number one is we fully understand that a studio itself is not really designed to quote unquote make money.
Right.
Meaning, as a revenue, profit, cash flow generating entity, that's a very difficult proposition, probably even impossible. And so we have to take a very long-term view as to how the value is realized by the studio. And so really the goal of the studio from our perspective is to break even, if you will, at some point, and hopefully sooner than later. Right now, Kyle and I are really subsidizing the studio, and allow the sustainability to happen on a year-to-year basis, and really be an aligned partner with the companies that we are helping to build, and that our real value is from the equity portfolio that we are creating through the studio by partnering with these companies. And so we really have to separate the studio and take a long-term view. And so we're not taking any income from the studio. And I think we've probably gone really far in that direction, to show that we believe in the long term and orient toward the long term as we think about how a studio needs to operate. We have a budget. We have some plans to inject more capital into the studio so that we can grow it a little bit faster, but that we're very mindful of cash flow. And on the flip side, as we think about the companies that we're investing in and we're putting capital into these companies, we actually believe by partnering with them, we can extend, and I think this was our thesis from the beginning. Even more important now is we can extend their runway.
Sure.
So with less capital, they're going to have less burn. They're going to be able to be more capital efficient in the early stages and be able to withstand an environment like this. And we're getting a lot of leverage from a studio that really can offer them the whole scope of capabilities that they may need from a strategic side, where we have folks like our head of data and technology and head of product, Kyle and me, who are, from a cost standpoint, very, very inexpensive to them to tap into, and all the back office capabilities that we put in place that we make available, but it's also on a discretionary basis. So we've been very careful to really say we want to be at market rate or better for anything that you would want. And you have to see and believe that you're getting a way better deal by working with us than you are elsewhere, or else this isn't probably going to end up looking like a great partnership. And so that's been a real key as to how we think about it.
Yeah, let's touch briefly on, because I want to get to CLA and we've got a few other things, but tell us about some of those investments that you made. So can you run through your portfolio companies?
Sure. So yeah, I'll highlight a couple. A couple that I would say are really in the sweet spot of how we think about things. We have a company called Chatterworks, and Shafir is a great founder. We're about to launch, and so it's been the last several months have been really heads down getting the product built. But this is a multi-time early stage, I would say founder and senior operator in several companies. His last two startups have gotten sucked up to the Bay Area. One of them, the investor pulled up there. The one most recently got acquired, and the whole team got pulled to the Bay Area. And he is true, through and through an Orange County guy and wants to build it here. And so we had such values alignment around this idea of let's do it here. And so he's building a SaaS platform for the recruiting and jobs industry, and something that is a massive industry. He's a great founder. He's very collaborative, very coachable, and it's been our biggest investment, as well as the most significant amount of time that we've put in. And we're super excited to have the right founder that we can complement and collaborate with. So that's one example. The second one is one called Spoonful, and Deepa is actually based in the Bay Area. She has an entirely remote team, but she has family roots and a lot of ties to Irvine. And when we met her, she was contemplating relocating to Orange County and was curious about understanding the Orange County startup community. And we just fell in love with her and said, we want to get involved. So let's partner with you. Let's help you. And at some point, we think as you start to grow the company, let's establish Orange County as the real center of it. And that will then give you the opportunity to potentially move here. And so that's really a recruiting endeavor on our part to, recruit a world-class entrepreneur and founder to Orange County. It's just maybe going to take us a little while, but we're really excited about Deepa and the team and the things she's doing at Spoonful. And then another one I would highlight that actually was early stage in the Cove is a company called Give Some that is somewhat known across the community here. And we made an investment in Give Some, and they have been working really closely with us for the last few months, and even moved into the office here at OC4 as they were really transitioning from what I would call product development to go-to-market mode. And so we've been working hand in hand with them to really help them start to shape their go-to-market strategy. And so I think, that's one that we're really excited as a, hopefully, cradle in the early stages at the Cove, has been, here and really doing some great work in the community and building a company that we think will have the opportunity to put Orange County on the map in helping to shift the digital transformation of the service club and nonprofit industry.
Yeah, what's exciting about Give Some, I just talked to Robert this week, is that, there's so much thought right now into how existing organizations and companies can pivot and adapt to this new environment. And they didn't really have to pivot and adapt so much as they're facilitating that to other companies. So they're taking some in-person service organizations and saying, look, you can't do what you're going to do in person, but you're a team, you're people of action. So here's something you can do virtually to do that. So they're facilitating that transition. I'm very excited about what they're doing.
Yeah,
So,
they're great folks. I mean, that Robert and Sean and Lindsay and the team are just, an amazing group, and we enjoy having them in here every day. I mean, it's lonely in here, and you know me well. I want people around. Yeah.
You can come sit at the Cove behind me.
There you go.
So, you wear so many hats. Let's put on another hat. You've got all those different emails for each one of them too. Email addresses, I know. So why don't you talk about the CEO Leadership Alliance? So you're assisting that group and what they're doing. So why don't you tell our listeners and our audience what the CEO Alliance is doing and how you're engaging with them. And I'll point out, I think I might have been responsible for that first introduction to you and this CEO Leadership Alliance back at an event last year.
So the CEO Leadership Alliance, I mean, it is a really exciting endeavor. I think in my time in Orange County, I don't think we've ever had such a dynamic group of senior leaders of companies that have come together. And really, they've been brought together around this idea of higher ambition, higher purpose leadership. Mm-hmm. And, really starting to think about how can they, in a county with 34 cities that doesn't have this force of nature like a giant city that can just drive it, and thus we don't have that government overreach. I think a lot of us look at that as an opportunity and say, hey, we actually, the business community, can play a really significant leadership role in partnership with big educational institutions like UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton and school districts. And how do we really take what's good about Orange County and orient the people that are doing great work to do it at a bigger scale, and to help them by providing some leadership support and pulling groups together where needed to work better together. And because I think part of what I think has held Orange County back historically has been a lot of really good efforts that could have been great if given the right kind of scale. Mm-hmm. And what I see with CLA is this opportunity to help give voice or leadership and identify those opportunities for collaboration and scale, with this notion of, Orange County is going to be a better Orange County if everyone here is thriving, and that we continue to think about how to be more inclusive and embrace this diversity it's a way more diverse county now than it was 20 or 30 years ago. And that's actually a strength and an advantage that we have. How do we build upon that in a really meaningful way? And so, CLA really, I think, looks at itself as a backbone organization and, really to be a heavy support organization. So that's why I think a lot of people don't know about it, is that it's not seeking attention. It's not trying to be out in front. It's trying to really lead alongside or lead from behind in many cases, but provide some additional support and fuel to things that are going well. And if things need to get started that don't exist already, maybe there will be things that we need to start through CLA, but then the goal would be to try to hand those off to others.
Self-sustainable.
That's
yeah.
right.
They've already made some nice progress. They've hit some great milestones. Want to share some of those?
Yeah. So the real thing that I think is worth checking out if you go to claoc.org is this notion of the flywheel. And so there really are kind of these 4 key areas that the group has identified as key areas to really push on to drive this economic change and economic improvement throughout the county in the coming years and decades. And so it starts with kind of supply and demand as you think about a flywheel that can turn. And so on the education side, a lot of work happening to go even, K through 12, K through 14 into community colleges to think more about jobs of the future. How do we make sure our education system here is providing the right opportunities and the right skills for the jobs of the future? So going into those formative areas, then leading into talent. How do we get more companies here to really preference and think about recruiting and retaining Orange County talent? And there have been a lot of companies, members of CLA and others, that have stepped up and said, we're going to create explicit programs to make sure every job that we recruit for, we're going to make sure there's an Orange County resident or a grad of an Orange County institution, depending on the type of job, that is a candidate for that job. And those are great steps of progress. On the branding side, some work to try to create this cohesive Orange County brand. What are we to each other here in Orange County? What are we to the globe, where we might be doing economic development and trying to recruit talent, recruit companies to set up a presence here? How do we do that in a collaborative way so we don't have various cities here competing against each other? And it's I think we have great assets that are even greater when we combine them together. And so the branding effort's been really valuable. And then the last one is on the investment and innovation side, which is where I'm spending most of my time. And how do we think about the categories of innovation that we as a county should be really leaning on and trying to focus and bring denser energy around? And if you look at something like
mass,
where we create these dense clusters, and there's a lot of evidence globally that when you get a really dense talent cluster, it's hard to supplant, and that it will build upon itself. And that's where you're seeing really significant innovation, job multiplying effects occurring. And so Dick Gockenauer, who's the co-founder of CLA, has been leading the effort on raising capital to really invest in funds that can focus in some of those specific areas. So he's made some great early progress in that. And this is, it's an exciting time. And I think, to your point, we've seen great progress. There's a lot more work to do. And a lot of, also what I'm doing through it is trying to be that backbone to connect a lot of the people doing work in supporting innovation throughout the life cycle of entrepreneurs here.
Yeah. We're already 45 minutes in, so we're gonna
I could talk about this for hours, Luis.
You and I can go on forever. So I'm curious. So what do you think are some of those technology areas that have the ability to get that critical mass here? What are some of the areas that you think you should focus on? And believe me, there's better answers. There's no right answer. I think
That's
there's a
right.
lot of different opinions about that. So what do you think are some of
Yes.
those areas?
So, I think there are some that have obvious evidence showing they're working. So you look at an area like ophthalmology, where we are a world leader. You look at an area like aesthetics and life science, where we are a world leader, and continuing to build upon those, and then look for other industries like that have similar characteristics and dynamics. Neurovascular is an area that I think a lot of people here are increasingly saying, hey, we have a lot to work with and start from. Let's do that.
Well, yeah, there have been a lot of great neurovascular companies that have started here. I mean,
That's
Sequin
right.
and a number of others
That's right.
they're pretty strong.
So I think on the life sciences side, we have a lot
Yeah. How about
of
on tech?
areas like that. And then on the tech side, I think cybersecurity is an area where we've had some wins, and I think there's some
Mhm.
opportunity to continue there. We had formerly a nice legacy in enterprise software, and I
Exactly.
don't think we really made this great transition into SaaS, but we have a lot of the bones to be able to do that. And so that's an area that we put a lot of time and energy into at OC4, as well as we think about machine learning and AI in combination with SaaS. And we just added we announced this week our head of data that just joined us full time. He was most recently the head of data science at Bird up in Santa Monica. Dave is an amazing, really world-class thinker in the areas of machine learning and AI. And so we think about Orange County really having, as I think about it, enough, and it's enough to start from. And Wallace Walrod and I had a great conversation, and I would encourage everybody, if you want to listen to a first Accelerate OC, go to listen to that one. I just posted it today. He puts forth a whole bunch of ideas. We talked about real estate tech. We talked
Sure.
about healthcare IT. There's been discussion about this idea of life tech, that could be next generation entertainment. That could be lifestyle brands, which we have a lot of history in. And how do you merge those brands with technology? We have some consumer hardware, whether you think of things like Kingston and Linksys and
Sure.
Mophie and
Red and
that's right.
there's quite a few
So
raisins here.
that's
So
right. And so part of the challenge, we have this incredibly diverse economy. We haven't told the stories
mhm.
of some of these amazing companies. And so people just haven't had their imagination captivated
Right.
to say, okay, what is really exciting to me that I can go put myself into. And so as we think about OC4, we're focused here on what we call data-centric SaaS. We can't be all things, but my hope is there are 10 more venture studios that start here in Orange County to capitalize on all these other opportunities, whether it's life tech or real estate tech. I've seen a tremendous number of really interesting consumer products.
Mhm.
And I have a heart for these entrepreneurs because they have really interesting ideas, and it's not my area of expertise. And there are people here who could absolutely come together and support those. So I think we have a rich array of opportunities, and we need to talk about the ones that are working, find those characteristics, and create more collisions for others to occur.
Right. And if we haven't thrown enough content at everyone, so yeah, we'll probably get criticized on this one. Like, you guys were all over the place, but I think it's been good so far. So let's bring up a little bit more content here, and that is with let's see here. There we go. And so I think you guys can all see that now. So we've talked about this entrepreneur's journey, and we certainly have to give a credit here to Neil Bloom from Fresh Squeeze Tech.
Yes.
He kind of gave us this concept behind this, but then you adapted it for Orange County, and I've added some more into it. So why don't you tell people conceptually what this is? And before the questions start coming in, we are going to post this, and it's a work in process though, so this is going to continue to change. But why don't you walk people through what you were thinking of conceptually here?
Sure. So one of the things that I think, as I mentioned a few times, this connectedness here in Orange County has been a challenge. And, and as you and I were even talking about this, most people, when I showed this to people, most people go, I had no idea that these groups were all here.
Right.
And some of these are people who have been here for a long time, are super committed and invested in this community, and they still don't know. And I don't know everybody at every one of these organizations. And yeah, as you know, I'm one of the more proactive folks to know people
Yeah.
here and try to be helpful. And so the idea here is, as a start, we just want to show there's a lot here. There's a lot here to work from. We're not nearly as deficient as sometimes we like to believe or criticize ourselves. And so we have a lot here. We have a lot to work with. And we need to help, really, as my vision is almost this notion of a concierge,
Right.
where we can help people through this process to access and understand the right groups, the right resources at the right time in their journey. And as you and I've talked about, if we can start to create unfair advantage where you want to come to Orange County, or if you're here, you want to start a company because you think and you believe, which I do, that we can support you to having a great success here. And that is going to help you realize a level of dream or a level of idea that you maybe aren't getting by working in a day job today.
And one of the things that I like about this slide and this idea too is that sense that you spoke of abundance. Now, admittedly, there's not all capital and everything for everybody, but I think what this slide shows is that there are a lot of resources, that it's not exclusive. You don't have to be part of one camp and couldn't take advantage of another one. I think that the value comes when you open yourself to opportunities from a lot of different areas. So kind of non-territorial, and take advantage of the resources as they could come through. And look, even on the right side of this slide, which is the part that I kind of put together, and you could go even further. I'm sure that's not even complete. And that's only firms and investors that have offices here in Orange County. And, venture doesn't stop at the county lines. We can bring capital in as well. So, but a lot of people just don't even know that. They're like, oh, there's no early stage capital here, or there's no Series B capital here. I think, someone that we know was just really complaining about there's no Series B capital here. And I made a connection and an introduction to someone in this slide, and they may even join the firm now. So it just, you've got to ask, you've got to make yourself available to it, and you'll see that there are quite a few opportunities, and there is an abundance of resources if you're looking for them, and if you're connected. And to Kerry's point, that someone helps guide you through it.
That's right.
Guide you through it, points you in the right direction.
That's right. And I think, part of what we have to do, and we as a community have to continue to do, is help orient and help people understand that, right? I mean, I think far too often I see folks that I meet who, they believe they have a great idea. They believe they have a fundable idea, and they haven't looked outside Orange County, and they don't see the 10 other companies in other parts of the world, because it's not just about the Bay Area.
Sure.
I think increasingly startups are more democratically getting started and growing all over. But it's incumbent on us as investors to look at this at a global level. We want to drive returns. Certainly, I, more than probably anyone, want to preference people here, want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But that's why we felt like what we really need to do is almost help raise the collective intelligence of a lot of folks here, including early founders, to say, we like you, you need a lot of help, and we're going to bring in that help, and that's going, together in combination, going to create a lot better outcomes. And to your point, Luis, downstream, I know most of these folks, and I know they would much rather get in their car and drive to a board meeting in the next city over here in Orange County.
Right.
And it's incumbent on us at the earlier stages to prepare those companies to be able to be candidates for that.
Yeah, we're starting to run out of time here, so I want to make sure I get to a couple of questions. So TJ asks, how can we create collisions during the stay-at-home time? You mentioned collisions earlier. And how do you see that continuing when things open back up?
Yeah, great question. I mean, Louise, uh, I host a number of regular events, and I think some of these groups on here also do that. We really looked at this environment as an opportunity to do more. And so OC4 has a number of events we're doing on a weekly basis right now to bring people together, give them opportunities to interact. I think as this abates, we're just going to probably do a hybrid where we're
Right.
doing more in-person events plus hybrid where people can join either remotely, or we'll do some that are in person, some remote only. So I think we're going to continue to really lean into this because that is, I mean, to me, the critical thing that we need to do is just we need to connect more. And so, uh, people here in many cases, they don't show up. And what I would just encourage people is to show up to things, and not to show up because you need, show up because you can give.
Right. Look to give and see what comes back. Um, Someone asked in our chat, what are the three things, and hopefully you can answer this quickly, and
Sure.
if not, we can talk later. Three things that make a company fundable today.
That make a company fundable. So some of that, I'll talk about it from my perspective at the early stages, and at least
Mhm.
how we think. So where we tend to think, I mean, number one is founding team. Are these folks coachable? Because our belief is, like, if you as the founding team or founder, if you have to go figure it all out yourself, or you believe you have all the answers, that's probably going to be difficult. Later stages right now, it's how fast can you get to traction, and do you have traction? That's what, I just, right before this, I was on a pitch competition, and they were focused on people who have traction. So path to revenue, path to profitability is a high pressure right now. So I would say, do you have the right team? And then the second for us is, are you in love with the problem and the customer, and do you have a learning process for how you're going to go figure it out? Right? When we meet people, they usually don't have it figured out, and I don't expect them to have it figured out, but I want to know that they have a great way to go about approaching that, and they have a commitment and passion for it. So those, I would almost say that, in a big market. So those, I'll stop now as I know we're up against time, but those are some of the key things that I would look for.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I definitely want to thank you, Kerry, for this time. As I was afraid, we are going to probably run out of time because you and I can talk about this for a very long time. So on the slide, you'll see the website for OC4's Venture Studio, so you can check that out. Kerry was kind enough to put his email address, or let me share his email address on there. So I know there was at least one question on the chat that I said we probably best answered offline.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and contact Kerry with that one offline. So with that, here is our time's winding down. I want to thank you, Kerry. Good luck
Thanks
with
for having
OC4.
me.
Thank you for everything that you're doing, because what you just described is invaluable, and I know you actually do even more than that. So we appreciate that very much. So, and to all the audience members, as we mentioned, and is on the slide right now, this will be available probably sometime Monday. If you go to innovation.uci.edu, you can find it in the weekly webinars, which is in the events tab. And we've already planned our event for next week. So we're going to be speaking with Jeff Boken from OC4 Venture Capital. Friday at 11 o'clock, and hopefully the neighborhood landscapers won't show up at that time, but I don't think it was too disruptive. And so watch your emails for the registration link for that. So once again, thank you, Kerry. You're doing great.
My pleasure.
This was very insightful for everyone. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. And for everyone else, stay healthy, stay connected, and let's keep building Orange County together. So
Absolutely. Take
thanks
care.
all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Luis. Bye.